This is K-Pop Sunday, brought to you by your K-Pop Sunbaes before you have to go back to work on Monday. We are your hosts, OldR,
Serin,
Min,
and JR.
Hi, and welcome back to this new episode of our podcast. Today we'll be talking about groups we would like to see reunite and why we hope they will return someday, as there have been a lot of disbandments and unofficial disbandments over the years. We know there are many fans out there waiting for their faves to return. So JR, why don't you start us off by discussing which group you think should reunite?
As we all know, I tend to talk about boy groups quite a lot, so I thought I'd talk about one of my favorite and most short-lived girl groups, and that is Pristin. So Pristin was a 10-member girl group that debuted under a then-independent Pledis Entertainment on March 21st, 2017. This was Pledis' first girl group to debut since their project group with Fantagio called Hello Venus in 2012. If you don't want to count them, After School debuted in 2009, but by either account, Pledis was way overdue for a new girl group. I also want to point out that many of the members participated in the first ever season of Produce 101, with members Nayoung and Kyeokyung actually having debuted in IOI, which was the project group that the show ended up creating and debuting and promoting. Anyway, after the immense success of Pledis' last debuted group, 17, who made a name for themselves as quote-unquote self-producing idols, Pledis wanted to capitalize on that model and somewhat fashioned Pristin after them, at least in the eyes of fans. I don't think that they ever straight up said that they fashioned them after 17, so don't come for me about that. But for their debut album, a selling point was that the girls either composed or wrote lyrics for all the songs on the EP entitled Hi Pristin, including the title track Wee Woo. The album did really well, debuting on the Gaon chart at number 4, and overall, it was a fairly successful promotional period. They showed up at all the music shows, they performed at Dream Concert 2017, as well as KCON Japan, and then promotions wrapped up around the end of May. The group then had a short break and at the end of August made their sophomore and unfortunately final comeback with the mini-album School Out and the title track We Like. The group continued to promote and got ready for awards season where they would be nominated for Best New Female Artist /Group /whatever each award show called it, and they would actually win a handful of those awards. Around mid-October, one of the members, Kyla, was announced to go on hiatus due to unspecified health concerns. They said she'd rest up in the States and then return to promote with the group once she had recovered. However, once award season passed and various members started doing activities, there was no word of a comeback, and rumors started spreading about Kyeokyung leaving the group, but Pledis refuted that. She was one of the more popular members. The group did drop a 300-day anniversary song and music video in January of 2018, but Kyla was still not present. Then, news finally broke in late spring that a subunit entitled Pristin V was set to debut on May 28th. It would consist of 5 members, and the concept would be quote-unquote villainous, which really was just another word for sexy, which was a deviation from the main group's bubbly young aesthetic. They did fairly well and people enjoyed their single Get It, but member Kyla would later say in a video that I'm going to talk a little bit about later as well, that she thinks that Pledis thought it would be better to debut a subunit instead of having only 9 of the members promote while she got better. So eventually, Pristin V wrapped up their promotions, the members did occasional schedules, but there were, again, no announcements about a comeback. Finally, on May 24th, 2019, Pledis announced Pristin's disbandment, saying they had all agreed to part ways. Of the 10 members, only 3 stayed with Pledis while the others had their contracts terminated. And then, just a little over a month after, their fan cafes and social media sites closed down, with their YouTube channel being the only official platform left up today. So many of the members have continued in the entertainment industry, some of them debuting again, like in Hinapia, or doing solo work, while others have tried their hand at acting. Unfortunately, none of them have hit it big, but they all continue to work hard in their respective fields. So what was the problem? I think there were a few problems, personally. One thing that I'm going to mention that I don't really think was a problem, but I know a lot of people might attribute their downfall to this, is that Kyla, the maknae, she was the one that went on hiatus. At the time of their comebacks, she was deemed by some people to be too big to be an idol. They didn't think she was thin enough, which is ridiculous. I remember at the time people were saying she was being treated poorly, not just by photographers at their showcases that didn't give her as much time as the other members, but also by fans. Like, they were just being really hateful and nasty, which, like, she was a young girl, and, like, to be sitting there picking her apart, I think was very gross. Some people speculate that this was part of the reason, but she has said that the hate she was getting was not part of that. The other thing that I think needs to be taken into account is something I'll call the post-produce 101 effect. The show and IOI were huge, but that popularity did not necessarily translate into numbers for the groups that the contestants and members ended up debuting in. So obviously Pristin wasn't the only group like that. I think there were members of like DIA and like Gugudan and, you know, groups like that also struggled. Wikimiki was another one. They just did not have enough fans supporting the other members. So a lot of fans came into these groups, but after a while, they all kind of dwindled off because, you know, there's a lot of members, a lot of groups, and it didn't work out great in that way for a lot of those girl groups, unfortunately. Pristin did fairly well for themselves, however, but they were also under Pledis, a company that many K-pop fans believe is notorious for not treating their artists right. They have somewhat of a history. And another thing to take into account is that Pledis had also started to dip their toes into what would become Fromis9 and IZ*ONE. And I've seen people talk about how Pledis wanted to focus on them because they had more promise, which, in a way, you know, I feel like I can see where they're coming from. So, in September of 2019, Kyla made a YouTube channel, and her first video was answering fan questions. She said that the group doesn't really use their group chat anymore, but they do speak to each other individually. Again, that was in 2019. I'm not sure where they stand right now amongst each other, but, you know, they were friendly, at least, it seems. She also said a lot of things happened behind closed doors. It was pretty vague. And she also reiterated points from the disbandment statement and also put some rumors to rest about her hiatus, which she said was due to a concussion from the We Like Music video. Overall, in my opinion, the girls had an incredible amount of potential that could have been refined if they were given the opportunity to do so. But again, Pledis didn't give them a fair chance, at least in my opinion. I've mentioned this before, but their work seemed a little bit unpolished and like some of their music needed some workshopping. And I think that if they had given the care that 17 got, I think they would have gone much, much farther.
Yep. Yeah, I totally agree with that because in my opinion, Pledis just didn't have their eye on the ball and just didn't want to put in the work to foster the talent post-debut. Mm-hmm. And I think what they wanted was for the girls to just out of the gate, have a masterpiece. And they just didn't have the patience to help them grow and find a voice to settle on that would be their own. And I think that when, at least me, I assume that a lot of newer fans don't think this way, but when it comes to like after school and how interesting that they were, I think that they were taken a bit more seriously by their company due to Kahi, which is one of the reasons why I personally think that older and more experienced idols shouldn't be discriminated against, because in my opinion, and I'm not the first person to say this, we wouldn't have gone bang without her pushing it. Whereas with Pristin, it feels like they were being blown off for being young girls from the start and not taken nearly as seriously as they should have been if Pledis actually wanted them to be a self-producing group. Like, I feel like they cut them off. They didn't have an interest in staying with them and growing them, and they just didn't have the patience, I think, was a huge thing with it. Because, like, self-producing groups, even when, like, their debut song is, like, interesting right out the gate, they still grow. And if you encourage them, mentor them, they can go and become their own thing that's way more interesting than what they were just handed. But a lot of companies, though, don't have that patience.
Yep.
There's some of them I don't think they even know how to foster the artistry. They're just looking for a check in, check out, which I think was part of it, and also the reason why it's even more disappointing that they did that.
Yeah, I think they were anticipating a similar response to 17. Woo is like, it's a fine song. Like, there's parts of it that, you know, get stuck in my head. But I think that they didn't have in my opinion, they didn't really have like a Woozy type member. So I feel like Woozy was like, was the main driver of 17's sound, you know? And without having that in Pristin, I think, because Pristin didn't even have set like member roles, if I'm remembering correctly. And so I think it ended up making it a little bit disorganized, and that translated into their music, which of course I like their music. That's why I chose them, right? But I think that had they been given the space to grow and, you know, hone in on their talents, I think that they could have done really incredible things and maybe even rivaled some of the really big groups that we have today. But they never got that chance, which makes me so sad.
It's awful when you see companies that are so short-sighted. And it's like they could have been the next fill in the blank. But you pretty much dumbed down the industry by refusing to invest in that. You thought that your investment was only money. And that's where you screwed up.
And it's just crazy to me that they didn't want to have a comeback with only 9 of the members. And that's not to say that Kyla didn't have her place in the group. I do think she was a rapper. She you know, she's gone on to release an EP of her own. But if they had allowed them to continue releasing music, they would have been able to strengthen their fan base. And then when Kyla returned, like, you know, they would have been all together. Yeah. Like, it doesn't make sense to me that they would throw out an entire group over one member, which I don't think they did.
I don't think so.
But I think it was really silly to not let them have a full comeback before Pristin B.
So they were around for like, what, 2 years? 2-3 years?
Yeah, 2017, and then they disbanded in 2019.
So 2018. Yeah, so that's about 2 years. So, especially considering how most contracts are 7 years, I know for like TV shows, like they're like 2 years, but you couldn't even invest 3 years? That was too hard for you.
Yep. And she said they had 20 to 30, Kyla said, they had 20 to 30 songs like backlogged. So it's not like there wasn't any content that could have been, you know, I don't know.
Even if they did say, hey, we're putting you on hiatus until one of your members come back. Let's say that they said that. They could have let the girls in the meantime work to get better at composing, at writing, practicing, and building up their fan base, as you mentioned, to where then they could have produced better stuff than if they left them stagnant, which is what they did.
Yep. And I think it's also telling that the majority of the members ended up leaving.
Yep.
So it's truly a Pledis issue and not, I don't think the members are at fault at all here.
I think it's also not just a Pledis issue, it's also specifically a Pledis girl group issue. That unless you have a Kahi or
I think that even if they came back today, all of them, you know, they've gone their separate ways, they've done their own things, but I think that they'd still be able to release something really interesting if they were ever to come back together. Okay, so now that my first pick is out of the way, OldR, will you tell us who you wish will reunite someday?
So the first group I want to mention is One Time. They're a first-gen hip-hop group from YG that was active from 1998 to around 2006, when they went on hiatus following their 5th album that was released in late 2005. The group had 4 members, Teddy, Danny, also known as Taebin, Baekhyun, and Jinwon. One Time has a special place in my heart because their 4th album, Once and For All, was one of the first K-pop albums I got a physical copy of, and even years later, I still quote Hot Dugo and put him up. Also, Teddy's chemistry of Lexi in Let Me Dance, which was released that same year, was what turned him into my bias. The reason why I want to see them reunite in some capacity is that a lot of K-pop fans don't know about them. Over the years, I've seen a number of retellings about YG Entertainment's history excluding them, and that bugs me. Their sound and appearance influenced a lot of junior artists both in YG and also outside of it. However, that doesn't always translate to those fans giving them a listen. Additionally, in my very biased opinion, Teddy's best work is early 2000s hip-hop, for songs like Jinushan's Ayo and YG Family's Hip Hop Gentleman. And fans of junior groups probably aren't aware of the difference between his recent stuff and his older work. One Time had a lot of charisma on stage, and I'd like to see them together again. Aside from the logistics of having a comeback after not being active for so long, I think that Danny living in California could make it more difficult. However, back when he had a podcast, he said that he was down for a reunion if the others were. At this point, I don't think we'll ever get a full album, but I think an appearance on Sugarman wouldn't be unreasonable. That show has brought a lot of closure to artists and fans over the years, like K-pop and D-Base, And I would like that for One Time too.
Well, One Time was one of the most popular requests by the viewers. A lot of people wanted to see them on Sugar Man, but it was the members that declined.
Oh,
I want to know which
really?
members. Name them.
Interesting.
Baekhyun said it.
Of course,
Baekhyun
it's him.
said it very clearly on his Instagram. Like while he still had Instagram, it got deleted. I don't know why. Maybe he deleted it. Maybe it was like reported or flagged or something. Anyway, Baekhyun made it very clear that they will not be appearing on Sugar Man and that they had no plans of reuniting. But if right now, what I suspect is that Baekhyun is working as a voice actor right now, and his new profession, I don't know if he's still doing it, but that transition is probably going to interfere with any other projects because he is legally binded to a contract.
Of course it's him who's the downer. Why am I surprised? That is so on brand for him. Baekhyun, you are now 4th. If I were to rank the members, you're 4th.
But the thing is, also if One Time reunites, I don't know what the public's reaction would be because I like some of their songs, I know some of their songs, but it's what happened after they went into a hiatus that got a bit of flack, especially Baekhyun, because he has gone through a lot of social media stuff, disputable stuff on social media, and he's the most earthy member in my opinion. Like when I saw what he was doing during the Korean voting days, I was like, I have no hope for him.
Yeah, but I don't feel like that. I don't know. I feel like Teddy was a competent leader and charismatic one. I feel like he could say, Baekhyun, we're doing this. Come here.
Well, Teddy is still doing music, so I mean, good for him.
But he's only
what I
a
do
producer. We
want
don't see
to
him on
see again
stage.
is Danny / Tebin recording music again because he deserved way more than one solo album.
I don't think Teddy even had a solo album, did he?
I don't think so.
If he did, he only had one. I don't think so, and I don't remember Baekhyun or Jinwon having one either.
No, I mean
Baekhyun
Baekhyun was in that Mugadang group, under YG. He was a part of Mugadang, but no solo albums that I can recall.
Which is absurd. Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense. And again, I think that I get it. Danny he's a busy man. He's doing a lot, but I think though people need to see him on stage again.
What is Danny up to? You said he's back in. You said he's back in the U.S.
Yeah, Danny's living his best life. He's living his happily ever after with his old crush and their 2 kids that they go to Disneyland frequently. They're good.
Well, that was an enlightening tangent. Very nice.
Yeah. But that's just my opinion. What about your group, Min?
So, I am predictable. Now I want to see 21 reunite. So, if you don't know, 21 was a YG Entertainment girl group who made their debut back in 2009 and was active up until about 2016. The group consisted of CL, Dara, Boom, and Minzy. They were the first group that I actively followed, and some of the members were around my age, making it easier for me to connect with them, and they, alongside Big Bang, were the groups that made me really get into YG. And I'm still a fan of YG Entertainment, it's just difficult. They make it difficult. But alas, here we are. 21 was not YG's first girl group, but they did last longer than the 3 to 4 years the previous groups had lasted. So that's something. They were originally marketed as the female version of Big Bang, and released their pre-debut single Lollipop with Big Bang as an LG Scion ad, like a commercial single, in March. And then their debut single, Fire, dropping in May of 2009. They only released 2 studio albums and 2 mini-albums, and as we have noticed, YG loves to pad out their artists' discographies with quote-unquote filler releases, so they also have 3 live albums and 2 Japanese compilation albums, or best-of albums. But there isn't really that many songs, honestly, that are, unique. I have gone at great length about this fact in other spaces, in other episodes, I believe. So we're not going into it right now. And their most popular single would be I Am the Best off of their second mini-album. The group's final album, not including the live albums, Crush was released in 2014, and musically it was very quiet from the group until their disbandment. YG Entertainment had as early as 2012 started hinting at a successor to 21, and seeing as the group's contracts were starting to come to an end, they were put on the back burner after 2014. Yes, I am skipping over a lot here. There were other factors that put the group on an actual hiatus in the end of 2014, but in hindsight, it seems more like those situations were kind of an excuse to put them on the back burner, but that is just my personal opinion. It is not a fact. That's just me being a little goblin. And also, I don't want to go on too many tangents today. So yeah. The group disbanded when Minzy left the group in April of 2016, though YG Entertainment wouldn't call it over until November of 2016, so it was an odd time period. As a little side note, I remember the day that Minzy left, because I got a text that morning from a classmate about it if I'd seen the news, and I was like, what, no? And then on my way to school I looked it up and I was like, oh no! Low-key cried. Yeah, like, was it kinda obvious that was gonna happen? Yes, but it was still sad, okay? In January of 2017, after the official disbandment, 21 as a trio released the song Goodbye, which I still kind of have odd feelings about. I don't know what to feel about it. It still feels a little bit odd to me, but it was a goodbye song. So hey, we got a goodbye song. That's something, I guess. Anyhow, 21 is an interesting case study in how YG Entertainment manages their groups. And you can see the plot lines repeat in their future groups, especially their girl groups. Mainly their girl groups. It's fascinating how copy and paste some of the story beats are. But that's just my opinion. Nothing is set in stone. Yada yada. But don't sue us, please. Even though I'm not saying anything slanderous, please don't.
I was gonna say.
Please no. But, as I was writing this episode, because this episode is from the past, and you're hearing this in our future. So, in May of 2024, all of the 21 members got together for a photo shoot to celebrate their 15th anniversary. And often the members hype up each other's work, and you do occasionally see the different members appear together, like Minzy appearing on Dara TV, and most notably, the CL set at the 2022 Coachella performance with like a mini reunion. I would have died if I was there, honestly. But yeah, they as members seems to still want to support each other, which is cool. And I'd personally love to hear new music from them all as a group, because they play off of each other's strength so well, and they look like they enjoy their time together as a group. All of the members individually have very different artistic directions, and I would love to see how that combined would translate into the musical style of the late 2020s. Because music trends now is very different from the 2010s. The vibes are different, and I would love to hear how they would do that. But as I said, we are living in the past, and not long after I wrote that segment, CL was spotted having dinner with YG. And when I mention my YG here on out, I don't mean YG Entertainment, I mean YG the dude.
That's what most people know him as anyway.
Yeah.
True. As we've seen with certain other folks, people clearly know them by abbreviations and not by like their full names. They'll mix them up.
Yes. So I'll be calling him YG. And there has been a meeting between YG and all of the 21 members. But the specifics of said meeting is not really been revealed, haven't really been revealed. So there is that. They have talked. Only the future can tell what happens. I don't know. Maybe? Maybe not. Who knows? I don't. So yeah, I'd love to see 21 again as all adults now. So I think that would be cool. Any comments?
I'll be honest. 21 wasn't really like high up in my like favorite girl group list while they were still active.
That's fair.
I think it was because I preferred more feminine style girl groups back then, like Girls' Generation or Kara. But I always saw why they were so popular and how they got so popular. So I know for sure that if they ever reunite, the industry is gonna shift. The industry is gonna change.
Yes. Anyhow, that was my feelings and opinions. Shall we move on? So, Serin, what is a group you would like to see reunite someday? Maybe, hopefully.
Okay, thank you, Min. The first group I want to see reunited as a group is Sorry in Advance JR, because I know you dedicated 2 entire episodes on them, but Cheon the Grace.
It's all good.
Those who listen to our podcast may remember that we started off season 4 with 2 episodes about this group, but I just had to call dibs on Cheon because I helped JR with the research, and they were actually one of the few girl groups I genuinely adored in the mid-2000s. By the way, my bias member was Tana. Since a lot of the details are covered on those episodes, I'll just go over the basics. Cheon was a 1.5/2nd generation girl group composed of 4 members, Lina, Tana, Sundae, and Stephanie. They were active from 2005 to 2011, including the Dana Sundae unit. Cheon was one of the few girl groups that managed to actually top the charts in the mid-2000s. Back then, the Korean music industry was shifting rapidly in favor of boy groups like Dongbangsingi/TVXQ, SS501, and Super Junior. And then there were the R&B/soul-oriented singers like SG Wannabe, Big Mama, Brown Eyed Girls. Those who are familiar with just Abracadabra will not know, but Brown Eyed Girls also started off as a soul group. And then there's Sia, Fly to the Sky, Gavian J, so on. And then there were female soloists like Cheon, Baekjiyoung, Lee Soo-young. Then there was Pada of SES. Then there were the sexy dance singers like Yooni, Pin, and Kirgan, and so on. And of course, there were a bunch of musicians that specialized in other genres like hip-hop. For example, Lee Sang, Epikai Pechigi, or rock such as Buzz, Izzy, Eve, etc. On the other hand, the mid-2000s was the dark ages for mainstream girl groups. Jewelry was practically the only group to maintain popularity, both in music and entertainment in general, while other groups like Sugar, Cleo, Baby Vox, and Diva didn't gain enough accolades with their final albums and quietly disbanded or went into hiatus. Cheon was the fresh face the public needed. Although I agree that their promotion went wrong and messy in all ways possible, you cannot deny that they had some really good title tracks and B-sides. It almost hurts to know that they only had one song that charted #1 in Korea, and that is One More Time Okay, 한 번 더 okay. They had really solid vocals, yet their stage presence and dance skills were just as impressive. It would be a huge offense to exclude them when you discuss the history of SM Entertainment and their examples of talented idols. The reason I want to bring them back to life is simple. They are way too overlooked and way too underrated, especially now that it's been 19 years since they debuted and more than a dozen years since they went on a hiatus. And so many newer generation K-pop fans have no knowledge of them. I know that the members have mostly moved on with their individual lives, and right now I believe Lina is the only member who is under SM. I don't know if she extended her contract or not.
She left.
She left as well?
I believe so. I think we did an episode with that.
I'm pretty sure at the time of the episode she was still there. But let me double check.
I know that Stephanie left first, and then Tana and Sundae officially stated that they left. They didn't renew their contracts. I didn't get any updates on Lina right now. Anyway, but we had Stephanie and Sundae team up again to re-record Playful Kiss, the Inuyasha soundtrack, for a special crowd-funded album in 2022. And I know that Sundae was pretty much the central member in initiating meetups with the other 2 members, Lina and Stephanie. Tana stayed more under the radar. Side note, I did stumble onto this sort of platform she was on, and she was basically doing a lot of cover songs and a lot of podcast stuff on her own, sort of anonymously. Like, if people were asking her, like, are you Dana Cheon, she wouldn't address them directly. People would just call her, no, she is blah, 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 because, like, her moniker in that platform. But she was pretty open about talking of her career when her fans asked. She was talking about what some of her songs were like and what she thought of them, and she did confirm that she hated One More Chance when she and Sundae had to record it. Those tidbits, unfortunately, won't be made public since she's not doing those podcasts anymore, and she's not that active on social media either. But yeah, she was doing pretty well. By the way, quick notice, this is not a drill. 3 members minus Dana met up this April 19th to celebrate the group's 19th anniversary. Right. By the way, this was only 3 days before I typed this into the document. So you can imagine how excited I was to see Sundae posting all those photos like on her Instagram stories and telling Dana, you have to be with us like next year and so on. But it doesn't end here. Sundae shared an Insta story of Dana joining a group chat solely for all 4 members. This was like the first OT4 interaction in years because, like, you know how Dana was put under scrutiny after that controversial live stream and everything, and Sundae was pretty much the only member she had been interacting until she left SM. So her reconnecting with Lena and Stephanie is huge. Lastly, all 4 members finally followed each other, especially Dana. Guys, like, this is the first, like, whole group interaction we've seen in more than a decade, and my heart was pounding when I saw their posts and stories. Stephanie posted the photos. Lena was talking about the members. Like, Dana actually commented under Stephanie's post. I really got my hopes up for their 20th anniversary, which is next year. I'm wondering if they're, like, preparing for a comeback or at least a special event for the Shableys. Whatever it may be, this time you don't let me down. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, after doing the episode last year, I would be so ecstatic if they came back. I think that it'd just be really cool to see them 20 years later, you know, making music again. But we still have some time before we can say for sure, like, whether or not they'll do that. But yeah, it would be exciting. When I was doing the research, I saw a lot of people like say, "Oh, we want to see them on Sugar Man." For both, like, the original Sugar Man run and then Sugar Man 2. Yeah. Was there Sugar Man 3?
Yep, there was. I was there.
Yeah. So all 3 of them, people have been asking for them to come back.
Yeah, I did too.
Unfortunately, it never happened. So
I wonder if SM is, like, reluctant to bring those old groups back as well, because, I mean, HOT had a major lawsuit, because if Sugar Man wants to recruit, like, these old singers, they will have to be in contact with the songwriters to select which songs they will bring them back with, and then they will have to discuss what they can cut out for their script to go over the info they can share on the episodes and what they shouldn't be sharing. Then there will be, like, more discussions with the producers who are going to remake the songs and etc. I'm wondering if SM is kind of reluctant to do all that, because I know for sure that Kenzie hasn't been really letting a lot of her songs getting, like, covered on other artists. Youngjin as well. So,
well, there's the whole thing of Youngjin.
Yeah.
That's part of a bigger discussion you and I should have off of here, because there's a reason why that has actually been publicly stated. So
yeah. So if the songwriters and the label executives are involved, I can see why Cheon Sang-ji wasn't officially invited. But at the same time, it just makes it harder for the fans to wait for, like, breadcrumbs. So this reunion minus Dana was exciting enough, but to see them, like, interacting with each other, like, in that group chat was even bigger news. And I just hope that they can just mend or maybe, like, reignite their friendship and just come back to the fans.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was my first group. Back to you, JR. Who is the next group you want to see reunite?
Well, like Serin, I have also picked a group that we've done episodes on. Ironically, a group that I also wrote an episode for, I should say. As some of you might remember, I wrote an episode on Sea Clown a couple of seasons ago. Season 3, episode 4, to be specific. I recommend you check that out, as well as the Cheonsangjihi episodes, if you have not heard them yet. Anyway, while I really liked a few of their songs prior to doing the deep dive, I really fell in love with the group by the end of doing all that research. A quick refresher, C-Clown was a 6-member group under Yeedang Entertainment. They debuted in 2012 amidst a deluge of boy groups and managed to hold their own. And they got pretty positive feedback from the public for a few of their comebacks. On top of the acclaim for their music, the members were attending various schedules, both as a group or individually. So, by most markers, they were doing pretty well. However, during their 2013 promotions for Shaking Heart, their company founder and chairman tragically passed away. Again, if you want more info on that, it was a whole thing. Head over to the episode. Anyway, this caused a lot of issues within the company, and the media started to constantly announce more bad things that were taking place behind the scenes. It was kind of like corruption left and right. It was not great. The group finished up promotions for Shaking Heart and continued to have like a smattering of schedules until, before you know it, the year ended. And then the following years of 2014 and 2015, they only had 2 major releases, and both of them did not do well with Korean audiences. Overseas fans love them, but of course, that is not really a marker of success and like longevity for a group, unfortunately. There were whispers of disbandment for a while, but finally, in October of 2015, the group officially disbanded and went their separate ways. Some members are still in the music industry, while others have decided to live a quiet life outside of entertainment. Their first 3 releases, in my opinion, were incredibly refreshing. Yeedang wanted them to be different than other boy groups, and I think they did a fairly good job of that. Their final releases, on the other hand, were a reach for the popular sound of the time, and while they were catchy, I think the group did their best when they were making music in their original sound, and I think that sound would be a breath of fresh air again today. If they, like, updated it a bit, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, it's been 10 years almost since they disbanded, so I think it'd be interesting to see what they would come up with now, especially since, like, DPR Ian, he's been doing his own thing, and I know another one of the members has been writing music, and, like, it's been for, you know, pretty prominent groups. So I think that just bringing everyone back together and seeing what they have to offer today would be really interesting.
I think that with a group coming back together, it really depends on the members wanting to get back together.
Right, which I'm a bit iffy on that part of C-Clown, if they'd want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Because, like, for instance, we talked about 21 and how vocal they've been about wanting to reunite. Or, like, other groups, like I've always mentioned, HOT and Jackies. And I think it really depends on, like, it doesn't mean that the members need to be buddies. It just means that they want to work together. That's going to be make or break a comeback.
Yep.
I would love to see what DPR Ian could do for C-Clown.
Right?
I'm
That's
just
what I'm
saying.
saying.
I'm just saying. Especially, like, him directing music videos, and not just the sound, but just even the visuals. Like, what could he do? Like, I trust him.
Yeah. I think if they did come back, they would be in an especially unique position because of DPR as a whole, you know, like,
Yeah.
and they've just gotten so much acclaim and they've tried so many interesting things. They're a really fresh presence in the industry. I think it'd be really interesting for him to then bring the people that he did work with for 3-4 years. You know, I'm not 100% sure how long they all trained together at this point. But I just think that it'd be so cool to see what he would do now, you know?
Yeah, especially because I believe that you said in the episode that they were also restricted on what they could or couldn't do. So I think that them having the freedom, like full-on freedom that DPR has now, that I think we could go some very interesting ways.
Yeah. Yeedang is defunct now, I believe.
As deserved.
They turned into banana culture, right? And then they also left. So I'm sitting here wondering, like, is the C-Clown trademark just floating out there? Can they like actually get that? That would be interesting.
I think it depends on who owns it. Because, like, take HOT.
Well, I'm
instance,
saying yeah, but SM and the other guy, they're
well,
still
if the
around.
remainders of the company got acquired or delegated to another, then that label will probably own the rights, kind of like BAP.
Exactly.
Because, like, you know how BAP, Yeah, because TS is gone, like, TS Entertainment is completely gone now, but the music distribution rights got delegated to another agency. I think it was Kakao or some other, yeah, it was definitely one of the more bigger, well-known ones.
Maybe it wouldn't be easy to get then.
And then Kara, Kara used to be under DSP, but then DSP got acquired by RBW, so their reunion, When I Move, was released under RBW's trademark. And right now, because BAP is preparing like a single as a quartet right now, since like Hinchan is obviously out of the picture, and then Zello is in the military, so the rest of the 4 members are just like recording, like, and doing some kind of special project. They're doing that under MA Entertainment, which happens to be the label Chongup and Taeyeon are signed under. So I'm guessing it all depends on the law and the actual actual contracts.
It also depends on if there's someone choosing to renew it. That was the issue with HOT's trademark, aside from the whole fraud of it being taken away from them, was that Director Kim was renewing it every time it came up, so there was never a lapse where the members could get it. He wasn't the only party who had different assets of HOT, that they are slowly pulling them back together. That was the issue that's very different from a lot of other people's, is how many people own different parts of them that they are trying to get under their own name, which were, some of them, not legal, that should have been under them. So, whereas the difference with BAP, however, you didn't have someone who was paying the money to renew BAP, as we know from it going defunct, because TS was not ponying up the money, whereas with HOT they were. So I think it also depends on, is there someone still ponying up money so that way they can sort of hoard it? So I think that also will say a lot too.
I do know that Shina had to go through a lengthy lawsuit to win their group's trademark as well.
They did. They did, but it wasn't as split up as HOT's. I will say that.
This is a very different situation, because even if the trademark has been transferred over to another company, like C-Clown, unfortunately, does not have as much brand value as Shinhwa or as HOT. So, I feel like comparing it to any of those doesn't really give us much of an answer.
No, I was just curious though, would somebody put the money down to keep renewing it just to make sure that someone else couldn't?
Right.
Like just out of spite or whatever.
If the members want it?
There could be someone who does that.
Because I know UKISS set up a whole new label for their promotions as UKISS, and then some of the members sign contracts under it. So maybe it might be possible if the C-Clown members are totally over it and they decide to set up their own label solely for C-Clown promotion. The only problem is, are they up for it?
Yeah. We'll see, I guess, if that ever happens. Anyway, OldR, what is your final pick?
There's a duo that released only one song over a decade ago that I want to see get back together. I'm talking about the bad girls themselves, Jin Song-hyun and Kim Sol-yoon, better known as Devil and Angel. They debuted in the summer of 2009 and instantly took my heart with their one and only song, Bad Girl. It was a catchy track about how they're bad girls for wanting to appear in front of an ex looking better than ever. It was a song about women feeling confident in themselves. The vocals worked well together but weren't boring, as Sol-yoon had a husky voice. The music video for Bad Girl is absolutely a product of the time and is simple yet elegant. The choreography isn't complex at all, which is great for people who are trying to do covers of it. And like everything else about them, their concept is a subtler sexy than you might expect from that era. They dropped Bad Girl as a digital single in June, and then in July, it was announced that their music video, outfits, broadcasts, and even fan events were going to be bankrolled by the major fashion brand Shinwon. This was very unusual because they'd never done something like that before, especially not for a new artist. For 2 years, Devil and Angel were going to be models for the brand. They had a bit of press pre-debut as Sol-yoon was in the drama My Woman, and people considered them to be well-rounded entertainers due to their academic background, which set them apart from other new groups at the time. The girls appeared on the Mnet show Weezong's Pre-Star 1, where they were voted as one of the top 2 teams. They were invited to a Hallyu concert along with other big artists like GD, and they signed contracts to promote around Korea and Japan. I've seen people claim that the reason why they disappeared so quickly was that there was too much competition among girl groups during that time, and I get that some people point to that and also note that they only had one music show performance, but I think it was more complicated than that. They were supposed to have a follow-up track by the end of the year, possibly in fall, but it didn't happen even though quite a few details about it had been decided. I don't know what went on behind the scenes, But I found a flyer that alleged to be looking for the next Devil and Angel and had auditions held in early January 2010 from a company that wasn't the one they debuted under. Although that company did go under in 2010. Anyway, I have questions about how things fell apart, but I also want to see them back together because I think they could have grown into being an act that was mature and classy. Add in that Seong was capable of composition. I think that if they had time, they could have taken the wheel at some point. As there's not much information out there, we'll never do an episode on them, but if you're interested, I did make a doc that compiled everything I found. The more I learned, the more I felt like we lost out on a good group, and I hope they'll resurface someday. Does anyone else know who this group is?
I do.
Nope.
I've heard the song because you've sent it to me before, because I'm also a avid fan of one-hit wonder groups. But yeah, it would be fun seeing them again.
Yeah. I actually did a partial dance cover of this with a couple of friends, except, like, the thing with this dance is that they were calling it very sexy with, like, a fox, because it was like a fox dance where, like, they claim that they shake their butts, but it's more like they're moving their hips to look like a tail moving, and my gosh, do you get sore from that. So... This was like my song with my friends during that time, and it was really weird looking at articles from the time period and seeing what groups that they lumped these girls in with. Like, does anyone else remember 20? No?
20.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought
20. Hasumi yeah.
Yeah, the two girls, yeah. In my personal opinion, the production value and music of Bad Girl was way better than 20. Like, how dare you say they're the same thing? They're not going for the same thing at all, especially like how they started. Whereas also Devil and Angel are really interesting because they were both college students and like pre-debut they had trained to be actors and they were already sort of friends. And so then they got sort of put in this group together and they were like, hey, it's you. I think that they would have been like a very refined, classy, more mature, even though they were a young, more sophisticated group. And I think that would have really stood out for the time period if they had, you know, been around for longer.
Yeah.
It's still sexy, but it was more classy, I would say, than what some other, not to put down other groups, but it's just, to me, they really stood out. And it's like, I get why people wanted to sign contracts with them, which is also the reason why I think it's so weird that they had a contract for at least 2 years. And it didn't say anything, like, obviously we don't know what the contracts were in there, but like, it didn't say anything about how you need to have sold a certain amount of albums, need to bring in this much clientele, nothing. They didn't say anything about it. So I don't understand why the company would have had money problems if Shinbon was handling all of it. All like the big expenses they weren't paying for. It's like, how do you run out of money when you are bankrolled like that? I don't get it.
Who knows?
I certainly don't. But that's enough for me. What about you, Min?
The next group that I want to talk about is also a girl group, and that would be GI. So, again, this episode was recorded in the past, and there is a slight chance that GI has re-debuted when this episode airs. But I don't trust that it will happen, so we'll just have to wait and see. Anyhow, back in 2013, GI, or Global Icon, debuted as a 5-member girl group with a tomboy image and rap-focused music style, with Beatles, followed by Giyuk, as their debut single. And both of these songs kind of flopped, and 3 out of the 5 original members left and got replaced, and then they rebranded with a more sexy pop image with Dolego Dolego, which is a banger, okay? It is a very good song. I do like it. It also kind of flopped. And then the group disappeared. There was no official disbandment. They just faded to the background. So what I would personally love is to see them reuniting with the original 5 members and with their original concept. In the last couple of years, we've seen a rise in girl groups with a more rap-focused style, like Young Passe and XG. And I feel like the musical sound of the 2020s is much more fitting for GI than the sound of the 2010s were for them. The very auto-tuned style of the early 2010s just weren't really ideal for them. I think if they had gotten a chance to rap more naturally, it could have been better for them, but I don't know. So seeing them make a comeback as a more mature group, but still with that original styling and sound would have been really cool. But that seems kinda unlikely, because there is a good chance that we'll see a group under the name GI Comeback, as I kind of mentioned earlier. Because in 2023, one of the original members of GI, regained the rights to the group name GI from Singtong Entertainment. And she is rumored to re-debut the group with 3 new members. In 2023, she launched the GI Global Icon YouTube channel with a cover of Doligo showing off the new members, and they also did a performance together at an event celebrating the 70th year anniversary of the US and South Korean alliance. So they have had performances as a group, as GI, with the new members. Is connected to a dance studio called Rodopol Dance Studio. I am unsure if she founded the studio or just works with them, but it seems that 2 of the new members, Yebin and Hyuna, are connected to the studio, as you can see them along with in dance covers. Like Spicy. The final member is Ellie, who was part of Moonlight Girls, a group that never got a chance to debut. And she actually also has a private YouTube channel, where she does covers, both singing and dancing, which is very fun. Love that for her. As of this recording, there has only been covers posted to their YouTube channel, seeing as their main focus has been Doligo Doligo and other more typically girly covers, which isn't a bad thing. I just don't think GI will be coming back with a tomboy and rap-heavy comeback, even though they did do a dance cover of Giyuk. So yeah, to end my rambling, I really do hope that GI gets to properly re-debut and be successful and make cool music. I just don't foresee it happening. In my heart of hearts, I wish to see them do, but I am very excited to see them come back and make something new.
Very nice.
Did anybody listen to GI?
Yes, we're aware of them. That was one of the groups that we did
Posts
on.
about, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're well aware of them.
Yeah. I really do hope that they actually, get to re-debut. Even if it's gonna be, a whole new group than what it originally was. But alas. Anyhow. Serin, what's your last group of the day?
Alright, last but not least. Since my first choice was a girl group, I decided to select a boy group for my second choice. So I went with Leo. Some of you may know specifically one member as a renowned actor because he is actor Kim Ji-sak. He went by his real name, Posak. Side note, it means jewel in Korea. Very unusual name. He went by his real name, Posak, at this time and was in charge of, quote-unquote, the passionate rapper, with red as his symbolic color.
I didn't know he was an idol.
He was.
That's crazy. Sorry, continue.
If any of you guys watched the TVN show Problematic Men, he actually had his idol career exposed on one of the earliest episodes. And he was so mortified when the producers started showing old footage of him introducing himself and performing. So there's that. And he actually received his CD and cassette tape as a gift from the producers. It's kind of funny. You will find the video on YouTube if you look carefully. And that moment is so wholesome yet so funny. Anyway, if you're a fan of Ji-suk, you might remember him mentioning his career as Leo in a few different shows, like the aforementioned Problematic Men or Strong Heart. Another fun fact about this group is that it has distant ties to SM Entertainment. Yeah, I know, surprising, and it's kind of funny because Chun Sang-ji was actually from SM. Leo was formed by Lee Soo-young, who is the older brother of Lee Soo-man, and also the father of Sunny of Girls' Generation. One of Sunny's older sisters even worked as Leo's manager at one point. So the label Star World went on to debut 2 more artists, one being a Korean-American female soloist named Penny, and the other being a girl group named Sugar. Sugar became the most successful and long-lasting of the 3. I want Leo to reunite because their title track is so underrated. Slow Down Baby, 그대 천천히, is truly ahead of its time. It was produced by Yoo Jae-yeon of Vibe, and the rap lyrics were written by none other than Gary of Lee-sang. Ji-suk, I'll say Posak since that was his name back then. Posak's rap was actually quite decent, and the melody of the song is super sophisticated for a song that was released in 2001. I often imagine the song being covered or remade by another Hubei group. Usually, I imagine Shiny singing them because one of the members' voice actually reminds me of that warm vocal tone of Onyu. And if Cheon, may he rest in peace, was still alive, he would have slayed the high notes. I had the actual CD, and another track I want to recommend from this album is the follow-up song, Come On, Come On, because it has a more up-tempo, fun, carefree vibe. There is a music video available like on YouTube, and it's just basically the members having fun and goofing around in the beachside. It definitely has like really positive, funky summer vibes. Highly recommended. Sadly, Leo disbanded only 1 year later when one of the members left due to personal reasons, and Star World ultimately decided not to find a replacement member. I've seen a post from one of the Leo worlds reminiscing about the time they stand the group, and the comments were filled with other Leo worlds and even one of their former managers. If Leo ever gets to reunite, I think it will be a fun moment for the fans to recall their cherished memories, for Jisuk to relive the start of his career in the entertainment industry, and maybe for the rest of the members to reunite and perform in front of their fans again. So I did a little bit of digging about the group, and I really couldn't find any updates on other members besides Jisuk. However, when Jisuk first debuted as an actor, he was on a variety show called Star Golden Bell. Some of you might be familiar with the show. And when Jisuk was asked if he still kept in contact with the other Leo members, he said that one member, he never specified which, but he did say one member got married pretty early, and another member became an owner of a Chinese restaurant. And the only other member I could actually track down on the internet was the youngest member, Taehee, because Taehee has a little other story because he had debuted as a member of Nonstop before joining Leo. So OldR, you could take notes on this. But anyway, Taehee stayed in the music industry, became like a manager, I think, for a specific label. I can't remember the name, but I did end up mentioning this in one of my blog posts, so I had to go through it to recall the exact details. Anyway, he still dabbles in music. He's written / produced songs for a few artists like Isani, and one of his creations was actually included in a Korean drama. So that's that. There are so many other groups I want to see reunited, but it's cut out for time.
We'll see if we do another one of these episodes in the future.
I think another one, maybe we can do an episode on soloists we want to see come back, rather than groups reuniting.
Ooh.
Like soloists who haven't been active for so long and we would just want to see them on stage again.
I think that would be good.
Yeah. Alrighty.
I think that's a good way to wrap this episode up. Even though the groups we discussed in this episode haven't been active in a long time, we haven't forgotten about them and hope to see them reunite someday. Over the years, we've seen many surprising groups come back, either to make a new music video or to appear together one more time on a show. So who's to say that any of these groups won't appear again in the future? But that's it for today. JR, take it away.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, then please make sure to rate, subscribe, follow, and tell your friends about us. If you want to interact with us or just see more of our content, then you can follow the links in the description to our website, social media platforms, and coffee. Also, don't forget that our next episode comes out on August 18th, 2024. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Bye.
다음에 봐요.
안녕.